Welcome to Tattered Capes, where we explore the best of aging opportunities and the potential they hold for our future in a fun, meaningful, and engaging format.
Even though our capes might be a bit tattered, the superhero in all of us has a lot more resilient living to do. Catherine Owens is the owner of CLO Consulting, a trusted aging well authority and advisor in innovative senior living solutions.
I'm joined by Scott Fulton, longevity expert and owner of Home Ideations, a national leader in living environment design.
Welcome, everyone. We've got a great show for you today, and we have a special guest, someone who I've been following for a few years through my wife's connection, and my wife and our guest today, Kimberly Montgomery, go back a few years. They've done some shows together. And they've become friends, and I just kind of wedged in and saw an opportunity to say, I think this woman has some other things that are of real value that we need to help get the word out. So Catherine and I are more than delighted and honored to have Kimberly on the show today. Welcome, Kimberly.
I'm so happy to be here, Scott. Thank you for having me.
And really to kind of elaborate a little bit more, what we wanted to really talk about today was really the opportunities that are in front of us when we think about kind of across the aging spectrum. And what really jumps out at me is you are one of the people, very few, I wish there were more, who really goes after it and really wants to explore. You're willing to test. You could talk a little bit about kind of your journey, things a lot of us wish we were brave enough to do, and you have just gone ahead and done it, and you've learned, and I'm sure you've learned from some mistakes along the way, but you've also found some things that you wouldn't have found otherwise. So maybe we can just kind of start off with telling people a little bit about your journey of kind of how you got to where you are today, and we'll get into kind of talk about kind of the where you are today, but maybe kind of how you got to where you are. I think it's an interesting story.
I'm not sure it is. I think that maybe it's just been the way that I've lived my life, my whole life. I'm not particularly a rule follower, and I really do follow my passions. And mostly I think, sure, I can figure that out, or I can do that. So this is just an extension of that. The difference is, I think, maybe, Scott, that you're referring to is that I just haven't quit. And I don't know if I'm thick-headed or stubborn, but I've just kept doing the things that are really interesting to me. And I think, fortunately, I find so many things so interesting that I want to learn more about them. And I just keep following that passion down the road. The reason that you know me is through your wife, Cindy. I love Cindy. She is just a delight in my life, one of my favorite people. I have a channel on YouTube, Pretty Over 50, where I really put together information for over 50 women about staying healthy, staying fit, staying as active as possible. We do a little bit of beauty in that. And I think that because that is an important part of what my life is now, I'm always looking for interesting information or alternatives to make life, a little bit further down the road, interesting and fun.
Yeah. And I think what you touched on it, but I want to kind of go back and acknowledge your program, your YouTube program, Pretty Over 50. How many subscribers do you have now?
I think I have a little more than 250,000.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's and it really says to me, kind of, you have this way of connecting with people around topics. And I think, Catherine, I think the two of you, to me, are both kind of really, to me, echo what happens when people really engage and really kind of want to continue to grow.
And I love your show, Kimberly. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I love the title. I was like, why didn't I think of that? And it's easy to maybe classify that as just being pretty over 50, but really as you were just talking, I've always had the mindset of just being your own hero. And really, it sounds like that is something that has been so important to you and continues to be, but that you really encourage and find ways to empower. Your show is for women, but I would venture to say anything that you talk about really could apply to everybody. It's just ways of thinking and ways of living your life and things to be cognizant of. And so just really thank you for all that you do with that show.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, I have a ball, and I do. This sounds kind of cliche, but I have the best viewers, and they're smart. I like to think of my channel as, the beauty channel for thinking women. Oh,
Well, Scott and I talk about that a lot. Anybody that really is following a podcast or logging in are people that are proactive, really, and they want to learn and they want to find ways to continue to grow, and whatever avenue that is. So when you say that they're smart and engaged, they are making the choice to be smart and engaged, and to you obviously provide a lot of just valuable information because they have stayed with you. So congratulations.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's really been very, very fun. And I was talking to a girlfriend the other day. I don't know what I would do if I didn't do that, because it's such an important part of just my joy. And who would I share all the cool little things I discover with if I wasn't doing that?
Well, and you find out, I think too, I've probably, Scott, you can speak to this too, but I have found over my career that your intent is to help people, and the truth is it helps yourself quite a bit.
Yeah. And I think, Catherine, you hit the nail on the head. I think number one, or at least I found in my life, which sort of comes naturally, and I don't know if it's because I'm nosy or pesky or what, but if I or the people around me follow that, how can I be helpful? That just blossoms. It never goes wrong. It's when you start thinking, what's in it for me, that things then start going sideways. So if you're always focusing on how can I be a better family member? How can I be a helpful member of my neighborhood? How can I participate in a beneficial way with my community? And then it goes to your county and your state, and it just moves out from there. And when you have that energy where you're really looking to help people and you're doing something fun that you love, oh my gosh, it's just so much happens because you're generating that kind of generous energy, which in turn brings it all the way back.
Exactly. Yes. And that is, we talk about all those different areas of wellness. And that is what I think feeds to the emotional and spiritual wellness that do play a part in so many aspects of overall wellness.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've been particularly focusing on my channel lately only because I saw it happening in my own life, that you hit a certain age and maybe things slow down a little bit. It might be your body slowing down, producing things like collagen or energy or whatever it is, your muscle mass growth slows down. But then sometimes maybe you slow down in your interests as well. And I kind of caught myself doing that, getting a little bit less every year in all the areas that I thought were important. And boy, I caught it, and I'm turning that ship around. And it has made such an incredible difference in my life that that's kind of my passion now. How do we keep everything going at an even more exciting, brisk pace? At my age, I'll be 67 in just a few weeks, because now we have more time. The kids are gone. A lot of us are retired. We've got a ton of time. Let's make it really, really interesting and fun and valuable as long as we're here.
Do you think, though, that that's a little bit of the scary part? You get so focused on career and so focused on kids and all of those things. And sometimes I feel like now that we do have time and someone says, what is it that you enjoy? I don't know.
That is such a good concept, or that's such a good topic that you just brought up, because I've been noticing that in my circle of friends. And I think it's something specific almost to first world countries, particularly the US in particular, because we have this culture of achievement, drive, get a job that pays a lot of money so that you can retire and have a house and whatever. And I think that, and Catherine, I've just noticed this in my circle of women, is that a lot of us in the US, because of that collect stuff, own stuff, have stuff culture, that many people take a job for a paycheck instead of because that's what they're passionate about. And after 25, 30, 35 years of working for a paycheck, instead of working for something that you love, when you retire, all of a sudden that muscle where you followed your passion has atrophied because you've suffered through an existence that wasn't fulfilling, that wasn't following your heart for so long to get that income so you could have the house and the car and the vacations and the pool and all this, maybe not being as validating to yourself as you could have been. And now what do you do? Because you no longer have that inner conversation about what's important to you. And I've noticed that the women who, because I spend most of my time around women, that's just, the way it is. And Scott, you can chime in here, maybe the same thing for men, but those folks who followed a paycheck instead of a passion, I think have a little bit greater challenge to get back connected with how do I want to spend my time in a way that's going to just have me bouncing out of bed in the morning. Can't wait to start my day, regardless of whether it's a volunteer or a new sporting activity or a new social activity, or even maybe a second career. How do you find that thing that you can't wait to get at for the day?
Well, I think sometimes, oh, go ahead, Scott.
Well, I was going to say that Kimberly is really where my work started. It was seeing primarily men who were very successful in career, like as in, leading multinational companies who hit retirement age. And then I kind of saw some thrived without question, and others really, really struggled. And it was clear that money was not the answer. And so that was really, so I started to observe that at quite a young age. And I think so I had time when I kind of was in my own career doldrums and saying, oh, what am I going to do? And I thought, this has always kind of made me wonder what is going on, why some people struggle and others don't. And to your point, it's really not about their wealth that they acquired over time. And, we like to think it's about purpose. So I would look at you, right, as someone who you get up every day and, your energy comes through. And I'm sure not every day, we all have days that we have to drag ourselves through no matter what. But you've identified an opportunity to give back in a way that you're being acknowledged and rewarded for, which is part of that, give and take. Like as a teacher, I see that too. When you get the feedback from people to say, you really helped me with whatever information, with whatever conversation. And so I think when we don't know, so I'll kind of shift gears and say a little bit. I learned this through doing endurance athletics. And you don't realize when you go through weeks and months of training and it's building, you're doing more and more and less of everything else. And you do the event and you think it's a couple of days recovery. And reality is it's weeks and potentially months of recovery. And I think it's the same when people retire from the work. Okay, now I'm going to get a break and I'm going to get to catch my breath and recover. And then they discover recover to what? Right. And that's the and some just fall into it as luck. We get lucky or we try some things and we're willing to. That's why I kind of go back to, I just see you as someone who is willing to try. So you're willing to fail, but knowing you'll learn and saying that's okay. I know now that that took me to the next thing. And not everything's better than the last thing we did, and that's okay. That's the journey of life is maybe going back. It is not supposed to be easy. This notion of life is supposed to be easy is like, if you look at longevity, that is not that is not how you live, as in live actively to 100. You will have endured many things that'll have made you stronger.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, the spiritual people, the spiritual side of things, they will say that we come here to earth, incarnate here on earth for a core change, for just this incredible knowledge base in our soul level. And I can certainly think that that's happened for me. And I would imagine that, you know, both of you, if you kind of looked at it, you'd say, yeah, what I've learned has been incredible, and it's completely changed my perception of who I am and the strength that I have and my skills and abilities.
Well, and I think that I love that. And I think that goes back to what you're saying too, is we are trained and taught so much to put, as you were speaking about working for a paycheck or our careers or the house, we put our identity in that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that is a huge part of when you retire or change. I've worked with people in older adults, and giving up a driver's license, giving up a pharmaceutical license, giving up a pilot's license, whatever it is, it has been their identity or their self-worth or their sense of accomplishment, as you put it, and having to go within and rediscover, or maybe for the first time discover what those values are, because we are, whatever your society you're born into, whatever religion you're born into, we are trained, we are taught. And I think life is about self-discovery at all stages. And, you know, to your point, we were talking prior to the show, people just give up. They give up on that, or they, I mean, I hate to say this, but I come from a family where it's just, I was fighting it all the time because I wanted different. I wanted more. I wasn't going to settle with what life threw at me. And I have a twin sister, and we are so opposite. And she said, but this is who we are. And I'm like, hell no, this is not who I am. It's never going to be who I am.
Good for you.
Yeah. And so I think that it's okay. It's not a midlife crisis. It's not, you know, I love Brene Brown, and I was telling Scott the other day, I was listening to a recording of hers when she talks about the stage in life where we get that wake up call, you know, that we realize that time is limited, or, you know, as you were saying, we realize maybe we have this amount of years left if we're doing everything right. And how do we want that? How do we want that to be? And we have the right to decide at any time how we want that to be.
Yeah. And that, oh gosh, that's so true. And I understand your struggle to say, no, that's not what I'm not doing that. I totally get that. And I think that there are some people who just have a spirit of, yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to have fun. You know, and I often think, if I was dropped in the middle of a desert by myself, I would be lining the geckos up for line dancing at happy hour. You know, it's like, I would, in other words, it doesn't matter what situation I land in. And I've landed in some pretty sticky ones, you know, throughout my life, because I'm not risk adverse. And sometimes it doesn't work out, you know? So, and I always figure out, okay, how can I make this work? How can I have fun? How can I get what I need out of it? How can I make this an experience that's something that I'll enjoy instead of something that I'll suffer through? Because I'm not into suffering. I like happy and fun. You know, and I like happy and fun, you know, regardless of whether it's in a 5-star hotel or it's, you know, in the desert with the geckos.
Well, and that just goes to your point that you do have the power to decide, you know, how you can gain something from it, how you can make something a positive instead of always, well, this is why it wouldn't work, or this is why I can't do that, or I'm too old, I'm too young, whatever it is, do it.
And I think the basis of a lot of that is just fear. Fear that I'm going to screw it up. And you know, it's like, once a person gets, when they truly get, Catherine, that concept that no one is coming to save you. No one. You need to save yourself. And if
Mhm.
that's saving yourself from a friendship that's not healthy for you, or if it's saving yourself from a job that's killing your spirit, or saving yourself from a diet that's making you sicker and sicker and sicker every year, no one's coming to save you. You've got to save yourself.
Yep. And
Yeah.
all the
I-
people that are not saving you, they may be criticizing you, and they might be, not cheering you on, and that's okay because they're
Yeah.
not the ones that have to live
Yeah.
with your
Yeah.
experience.
And you've got to get to the point where what you think about you matters more than what anybody else thinks about you. And,
Absolutely.
once you have those two things on board, no one's coming to save you. And what you think about you is more important than what anybody else's opinion is. You're golden, because
Yes.
then you start rocking and rolling with, who you really are and what you really want to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's an excellent setup, because I think it leads to where I'd like to take us now is to, we kind of talked about your journey, which took you for willing to try different things and kind of taking care about you, which took you to, so I'll just kind of preface it. But before you move to where you are, we'll hold this off for, keep everybody in suspense for a minute. Were you in Georgia? Was that right?
I was in South Carolina in a little town kind of Aiken, darling, darling, darling little town.
And you had moved from Aiken, you'd moved from the West Coast somewhere, right?
Yes, that's correct. I'd been living up in the Lake Tahoe area, which
Right.
I loved, but I felt it was maybe time to leave the West Coast and journey east, which is what I did. And I landed in Aiken. I'd done some research, and so that was the start of my East Coast lifestyle.
Yeah, and I think that's about when I first learned about you, and you and Cindy connected. And
Mhm.
then we kind of turned around and you'd moved again. And so you moved to the Villages in Florida. And so so just to kind of preface this part of the conversation, I gave a talk at a lenders conference earlier this week, oddly enough, on communities of the future. And
Mhm.
really, where are communities going, but particular focus to, I don't really like to call them retirement communities, because I think that says something about them that is not going to happen. I think retirement communities will be a bad word fairly soon.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because, and I think we'll get into some of this with our discussion, because we've learned so much through experimenting in the commercial and corporate world that's now finally leaking into the residential experience, whether it's from people who've had commercial backgrounds or not. But we've been trying many things. We won't get into all of them today, but around the infrastructure and the organization of how we look at communities is now finally starting to come together in some cohesive view to say, this is actually the type of settings where people of all ages thrive. And so I think if we think about where you are at the Villages in Florida, there are elements about this that that for sure are Southern based, because we see more communities in the South. But I want to make it clear that this is not all about communities and everyone needs to move south to capture the elements of what community means and what communities that thrive can look like. But I think there are things, because you are living in the biggest community experiment in history, certainly
Yeah, that's true.
in U.S. history, right? And
At least
so I
the
think
history we know.
it's of such a scale that we can learn lots of different things from it. And because you come in with this idea of trying things, I think of all the people I could talk to at the Villages, and there's population of the Villages is.
It's a big number. I was just doing some research this morning. This was the information I found was from 2022. So my numbers are probably off. I have 80,000 residents, but that could be incorrect. That could be 80,000 houses. We are about 32 square miles, and it does take, interestingly enough, you think of a planned community as something, fairly compact. It's not here. It takes literally more than 40 minutes to drive from the north end to the south end. I mean, it's
Wow.
huge.
You
Absolutely.
span 3 counties. Let's go back and kind of say you were willing to try. So what compelled you to try it? I guess that would be what, because you had just got settled into South Carolina and weren't there that long and decided to go try it, right?
Yeah, I did. You know, it was kind of some personal choices or personal preferences. I had moved to Aiken, which I loved the town, but for me, based on my lifestyle and what I like to do, I wasn't finding as many outdoor activities as I need to keep me engaged, interested. I love to hike, I love to kayak, I love to be outdoors, and there just wasn't that much in Aiken that I was able to uncover, at least not in my community. So I had a girlfriend who I, love dearly and I respect her. And she said to me, my husband and I just bought a house in the Villages. And I went, you did? I just wasn't particularly, my perception of what the Villages was did not lead me to say, oh, how exciting. It was like, oh,
Yeah.
you did? Well, she started talking about it. And I thought, well, Kimberly, maybe you need to go down and take a look. And I thought, I'll go down for 3 days on my own. I made sure she wasn't there because I wanted to make sure that my impression was based on the reality of this community, not because I was there with a friend. So I went down for 3 days. I actually filmed it in a video and I thought this will be interesting because it's my first adventure there. It'll be a fresh perspective and, let's see what we find out. What I found was so different than the perception I had. And that's, if I can communicate anything at all, that's it. What you may have been told it is and what it is are completely different. And granted, I'm sure that I'm looking at it from my perception, but what I can say that I saw when I came here was a whole lot of people who are down the road a little bit in their life having a whole lot of fun. And if you're looking for activities, and I don't care if you are a domino player or a knitter or a long distance runner, or you like cycling in a team, or if you like volleyball or pickleball or golf, or if you love I don't care what interest you have. We got it here. And I am not kidding you one little bit. We got it here. There are over 3,000, and I think it's closer to 4,000 clubs here in the Villages. And it is a phenomenon, Scott. You guys, I just can't even describe for you. It's like all the people who retired and just absolutely were not done having fun. I am so ready to do more stuff. They all moved here and they started clubs. We have so much going on in the Villages and all this. And when I saw that, I said, yeah, that's me. Because I like to try new stuff and I like to do new stuff and I like to be interested and I like to be engaged and I like to be active. There's dragon boat racing, there's yoga, there's Tai Chi, there's craft shows, there's craft classes, there's painting classes. If you have any interest under the sun, your people are here and they want to meet you and they want you to join in on what they're doing. The other thing I noticed, and I've been trying to figure out how to say this in a way that doesn't sound like a cliche, but there's something happened in this community. And I think it must have happened way back in the beginning. This first was built in the 60s. It was originally planned to be just a middle-class community. It eventually morphed into a 55 and above community. But something happened early on because you could not have done it after it got bigger to a certain point. But there was a culture created of kindness that is pervasive throughout the Villages. And if you think of something, for instance, you would never go to Japan and visit someone's home and wear your shoes inside. It's just not done. That's what it is, that same, it's just not done here. In other words, you're not rude, you're patient, you're kind, you're helpful. And I was hit in the face with that just over and over again when I first moved here. And it was so shocking because I think that maybe the culture in the US right now is shifting away from kindness and away from generosity. It's not quite the safe space that we maybe grew up with, those of our age. It is kind, and people are patient, and you're not sharp and you're not short, and you find out how you can be, a good neighbor. When you get here, it's remarkable. And that kindness really filters into everything that happens, whether you're going to the farmer's market on Saturday morning and you're seeing your neighbors there, or if you're showing up for trivia night and someone needs a seat at the table. It's just constant kindness, constant cooperation, and constant, let's go have some fun.
Can I ask, because you're speaking a lot to what you have seen and what you're experiencing. Can I ask you what your original perception was when your friend said that they had moved there and you're kind of like a little bit surprised? What was that? Just, and I asked because I experienced that on level with what I do, but I am interested.
Yeah. Well, here's a little backstory. The couple that moved here first, that bought the house first, they had spent a year traveling around the US, both retired, both newly retired, deciding where they wanted to live. And they traveled all around and stayed in Airbnbs, trying to find that perfect spot. And they picked this. So it's like, it's not as though they didn't have a ton of choices. They could have moved anywhere. My perception was it was people in walkers.
That's what I was expecting you to say. Yes.
People in walkers. And it's not. When I go out in the morning, and I belong to a club, a gym, I'd ride my golf cart there. I take my golf cart to the grocery store. I take my golf cart to the gym. I take my golf cart to the farmer's market. We have I'm looking at my notes right here, 90 miles of golf cart paths. And most of us spend our travel time in our golf carts. So I'll get in my golf cart to go to the gym, and I'm passing joggers, I'm passing walkers, I'm passing, bike clubs, cycling clubs. People are playing pickleball. It is so active. And not that everyone is super fit. They're not. There's people who that's just not their cup of tea. They're not that interested. They're going to be doing different things. But the amount of people, or the percentage of people here who are fit and healthy and outdoor and active and just got it going on is astounding. And when I talk about the clubs, like probably closer to 3,000 clubs, I just emailed the director of the canoe and kayaking club this morning because I want to
sign me up.
Yes, sign me up. There are, in addition to those, like probably close to 4,000 clubs, like they're community clubs, like the neighborhood clubs where they get together once a month as a potluck party, and the women get together once a month for happy hour outdoors underneath, the little pergola thing. It is constant social activity, constant doing, constant. And when I saw that, I'm thinking that it's going to be a bunch of white-haired people. Not that having white hair is a bad thing. It was a poor term on my part, but I thought it would be a bunch of people on walkers, not very active and not doing much. And it's completely opposite of that.
And I had to ask because I was telling Scott prior to our show that I always feel like the active retirement communities that I have worked with are the graduates from the community type that you live in. And I say that because they're still active, but maybe have some different needs as they've gotten older, and but the exact same thing. And I had the same perception even getting into the industry. It's like, I don't want to work around that. And people say their biggest fear, and you're correct, it is fear of change and fear of the unknown and fear of making a mistake. And that's throughout our whole life. We maybe don't make decisions or avoid making decisions because of that. But people are always shocked. They think they're going to lose opportunities, or they're going to lose independence, or they're going to lose the ability to do things. And exactly what you're speaking to is what I've seen, not on that scale, but life opens up.
Yes.
opportunities open up. And I love the kindness thing, because I also hear that too, that, oh, you get in a community and there's going to be cliques, and there's going to be, and people's personalities don't always change. I'm in a golf cart community. I, I wish it was your community, but I'm in a golf cart community right now. And I do, unfortunately, sometimes I feel like I'm kind of in the, I hate saying this out loud, but the mix between the Mean Girls and the Real Housewives of, I'm not going to say
Yeah.
where, but kindness,
Mhm.
that is fundamental if you're going to feel a sense of community wherever you are, is
Yeah.
that kindness and the awareness of your neighbors and the needs. And goes back to what we were talking about, just service oriented, and what can I do to improve my community or benefit the lives of others, or really what sounds like prompted your show to start with. But it sounds amazing. I want to come down and
They do lifestyle visits. So here's a little story, a personal story. A few days ago, Tuesday, I had a girlfriend in the neighborhood say, "Come with me. There's a huge scavenger hunt for this women's group." So we did this scavenger hunt. Kathy, it was an absolute hoot. These women worked so hard. It was a golf cart scavenger hunt with about
fun.
80 ladies.
Oh my
And
gosh.
we had to go all around the community, drive from community to community. We had to go to the market. We had to go here. We had to ride horses into the grocery store. We had to sit on the pig. It's like we had to do all this wild stuff.
Oh, fun.
And part of it was we had to take pictures along the way. So I had pictures of this whole shenanigans, this 3-hour scavenger hunt, and there was a big barbecue and potluck, afterwards. And I sent the pictures to my daughter. And what I said is, "Mom at summer camp, don't come pick me up. I don't want to come home."
Awesome.
And that's what it feels like. I keep saying,
Yeah.
I'm at summer camp. And if you think of all the things, if you ever went to summer camp or sent your kids, there's arts and crafts, then you go meet everybody for lunch, and then you do another thing after lunch before dinner, and then you go have dinner, and then you sing around the campfire at night. We have 3 main squares here in the villages. And when you say square, think of the old town squares from, the 40s and 50s. So there are 3 major squares, and there are little shops and businesses and restaurants, and it's very safe. I walk around by myself all the time after dark. Each one of those squares has live music 365 days a year from
Fun.
5 until 9 o'clock. And so people will migrate up, and you'll see all the little golf carts heading up on the path to the square, and they'll go hang around and dance and this and that. I mean, it's just an absolute hoot. It's like summer camp, only you get to live here, and instead of having a bunk in a cabin, you have your own cabin. It's called your house. And that's the life. Scott, you guys have to come.
Yeah, Scott and I had said we wanted to make a point that we weren't endorsing any particular community, but I think Scott and I need to go down and do some research.
Yeah. Here's the interesting thing, and we can talk about this if you're interested. I'm not sure how it happened, because I've been in other communities as well, gated communities when my kids were growing up, or a golf cart community before I had kids, in the Palm Springs area. So I've been in these types of communities. I'm not sure how it happened that the culture of kindness was instilled, because it really is kind of an unspoken law. You just wouldn't be mean. It just is not done. So there's the kindness thing, and there's the activity thing. And I'm not sure how you create that little magic potion in other communities. But boy, other communities can certainly learn from whatever happened here. And I don't necessarily think it was the developers. I think that this community has ended up different than what it was intended to begin with. There was something about the people who moved here that created it that just is really, they really hit it out of the park as far as being a wonderful place to be able to express yourself once you're kind of done with that middle part of living.
Well,
Yeah, I
similar
think
to what you're, oh, sorry, Scott.
well, as you were talking about that culture of kindness, I was thinking in my own experience in different Florida communities, I look at, and most of them are not Floridians, right? They've come from, Florida is largely populated by the Northeast US,
Yes.
Eastern Canada. But I kind of use the New York, New Jersey, kind of hard hitting, right? We're fast, we're tough. And then they show up in Florida. And so it kind of says to, given the opportunity, that's where people will go to kindness. If they're allowed the opportunity, and that's safe to be kind towards your neighbors, because I think it's innate, in us once
Yeah.
we're allowed to put our defenses down. And I think that's clearly, you talk about it in, so I want to go into another practical element of this, is the design piece. So you've mentioned a number of times that you get around by golf carts. So just think about that, if compared to people who are having to go in their car to go to the mall or go to the grocery store and deal with what going through. So we could just, we don't have to leave the state, right? Just go to either coast and try to navigate around what most people think of as Florida as being beach communities. Your community is not, like inside that community is nothing like being in a Florida beach community or getting to a Florida beach community. That has, I think, people don't realize how much our transportation influences our behavior, right? So because everything is so close, you talk about, I can go here, I can go there, and I go because it's so easy and it's fluid to get there. So if we look at talking about vehicles of the future, the vehicles of the future, interestingly, aren't just electric. They're typically much smaller. So, like the Cooper mini car kind of thing, that's still big by a lot of future standards. So a lot of them are kind of taking what would be like the Cooper and the golf cart, but saying, but we're actually going to design it not on the golf course, but around these types of communities that'll have, and they don't need to have 4 hours and 300 miles of driving range. There will be vehicles to serve that, but it gets to there are elements of the design, whether they knew it or not, that support certain behaviors. I highly doubt they had that in mind when they did it, but it does. I think what it also gets at, what's unique about the villages and villages like yours, is that it addresses the unaddressed market, which is the middle class.
Yeah.
Most of it is really geared at, I'll say, the equity of 2 million and more. Then there's the other end, who are all subsidized housing, and there's a whole lot of us in the middle who really haven't had many great choices, which I think is partly what's neat. So I think, just to put some context to that, can you tell us kind of what house costs look like there, what like HOA fees, taxes? Give us some sense of what are the economics of living in a village like you're in?
Yeah, those are such good questions. You put that so beautifully, Scott. I think that we overlook how frustrating or stress-inducing how our communities are set up right now. And that's one thing I notice daily and appreciate daily, is my life is so easy here. It is so easy. I hop in my golf cart to go to the gym. I'm home in 7 minutes. I've been outdoors on the way to and from. It was just so very easy. And I've often wondered, why aren't they building communities like this for all ages? What's going on? Because this lifestyle is beyond pleasant. It just is so easy. Down to the economics, in my opinion, and I've come from the West Coast, so I'm used to, prices in California right now are crazy. And that's where I raised my daughter. So I'm very familiar with housing prices in California. Florida looks very inexpensive to me, based on my experience. The average home price in the villas, I think in 2022, was about $370,000. You can get homes, and I look at the homes often. I'm renting. My rent here is very, very equal to any place that I would rent, any home that I would rent in, on the West Coast. Probably a little bit cheaper. Housing prices here, you can get a home $1.5 million in this development. You also can get a home for $250,000. Of course, the $1 million home is going to have a lot more stuff. The other one is going to have a lot less stuff. One of the things they do have when you buy a new home, and I'm thinking this is how they offset a lot of the cost, because the HOA, or they call it here amenity fee, is so inexpensive. It's $180 a month.
Wow.
Think about this. We have over 350 recreation centers that are complete. Some of them have pools. They all have rooms that you can rent or use for your clubs. We have pools. My community, my little neighborhood, it's called Richmond. We have 2 pools. We have pickleball courts, sandball courts, dog parks, walking paths. $180 a month is the amenity fee. When you purchase a new home, I think where they recoup a lot of the cost is that there's also a bond that comes with that purchase, which is separate from the housing price. And so that bond is different depending on the county that you're in and depending on the price of the home. When you buy a used home or a resale home, that's one of the things. Is the bond paid off, or do you need to, factor in the bond price as well? So when you're looking at the pricing here, it's one of the most affordable planned communities, I think, in the US. Particularly, I think personally, it is a bargain for all you get. And think about most of these clubs, there's no fee. In other words, you don't pay to belong to these clubs. You don't pay extra to play pickleball. You don't pay extra to go to the pool. You don't pay extra for the yoga classes at the rec center. It's all included.
Wow.
There is more stuff to do than any human has time to do in a day. So those are the costs.
Yeah, it kind of gets at, again, that planned design, which gives you, so it requires a critical mass of people to support it, right? Kind of everybody is contributing something to it. Not everyone is going to do all the activities ever, or certainly never at all one time. But if you have that base and can spread it around, it really leverages it through. The other last topic I wanted to talk about with you briefly was generally around the conversation you feel that you're having or that you're listening to or being brought into, generally around the health and well-being kind of residents. Because I'm always asking my adult students around kind of, how do you feel your health and your lifestyle habits are this year relative to last year, relative to the year before? You're trending, and as we have more time, we're becoming more aware. There's more information available now. Are you seeing that happen there, or are you seeing are people excited about kind of healthy lifestyles and extending health span, or is it kind of or just happening on its own anyway? Or what's I'm always interested in what people are talking about.
Yeah, I get you. That's a good question. Scott, just off the top of my head, I think it's kind of a third, a third, a third. A third are not necessarily thinking about their diet and exercise. They're not into it. They're going to be playing dominoes or cards, or, they're not interested in being physically active. It's just not
que sera approach to,
and they're happy hanging out with their domino buddies, or, their card buddies or whatever. And that's great. Then there's a third, and I see it all the time in my community, of people who maybe during their career didn't have the opportunity to keep the fitness level they wish that they had, and are here and are maybe have some extra weight and maybe are not as mobile as they wish they were, but they're out walking, or they're out there going to the gym. I'm at the gym almost every day. I see people who are less than fit showing up saying, okay, I want things to be different. And then there's that third that these people are monsters. They are out there, they're running. I see 70-year-old Scott, I saw a lady who had to be mid-70s doing tricep kickbacks with a 25-pound weight.
Wow.
Which is impressive. So then there's a third that are they're here because they're going to run 10 miles after breakfast, and then they're going to go to the gym, and then they're going to play tennis, and then they're going to go to trivia that night. There's no stopping those people. So it's almost, when I say, regardless of what your interests are, your people are here and they want to meet you. I'm not kidding you.
Yeah, so I would reflect back that if it's a third, that's significantly higher than we would say in the general population, right? For lots of reasons. I mean, different phase of life and things, but I think to your point is, for those who are looking for it, it's, you can belong either way, and maybe that's really where you're getting at, right? That sense of, we all need that sense of belonging in a community, and we can certainly feel good there. That's
well, and I think too, the fact that it's there, your people are there, the opportunity is there, that is a hindrance for a lot of people. You have mentioned you feel safe, there's opportunity, all of those things that it makes it easier, it makes it more fun, it does give you something to get excited about, something to look forward to. There's someone that's helping organize it. Sometimes it's just, how do I start? Where do I start? Who do I do it with? To the third that you said, maybe it hasn't been part of their lifestyle, but they want to start incorporating different things. Those are the benefits of those communities. It's available. There's people that, like you said, want to meet you and kind of help you find that, discover that, to discover what is it that you want to try to, maybe you never knew that you enjoyed kayaking or dominoes or whatever it is. But I think the availability and the commonality of people that want to help and help you live your best life, I just think that is critical and huge to making it actually happen.
And that's so, it is so true. And I think because both of you work in this field, you're probably continually coming up against that. I'm lonely and I'm bored and I don't have any friends. This community, I think people here are so happy because all those issues are addressed. If you are lonely, there are a gazillion clubs that want you to join. If you don't have any friends, join a club, you'll make them. I make friends every time I do a new activity. I've got a new friend. And there's no reason to be bored unless you want to be bored, because there's so much to do. It addresses all those things that I think end up being a sticky wicket for someone who retires and is a little older, maybe is not as outgoing as they wish they were. It's easy to sit in your house and become isolated. It's just not an issue here because the barrier between sitting on your couch by yourself and being involved in an active fun group is so tiny. I mean, it's just literally showing up to the community center that you take your golf cart to in a minute. It's so easy.
That's kind of what I was getting at. The golf cart transportation thing plays a bigger role than people realize it. Right, because that whole barrier of getting over the threshold. Yeah.
Well, and to your point, isolation, I've done a lot of just research and study on that because I work, unfortunately, with people that have spent a lot of time in isolation. And the sitting in your recliner, the not engaging, and I was listening to this report that was done in the UK, but they were saying that it actually, loneliness and isolation should be considered as a huge preventative maintenance component. But it is, I tell people all the time, well, I don't want to give up 3,500 square feet. I don't want to give up. Your houses don't keep you company. I mean, it's just that job, the wealth, the house size, all of those things. And we need that. We need those things in place to continue staying healthy. We just do, cognitively, physically, emotionally, all of those things. So we might not think they're as critical. They are very critical to that.
Yeah, because it just starts that spiral.
It
And
does.
there's saying around here is nobody lives in their houses. That's like a little saying, because they literally don't. I mean, it's where you go to bed at night.
Yeah. So
Other
you
than
live
that,
in community, literally.
yeah,
No?
you're out and about. And
Yeah.
there are nights when, I'm here, I'm single, I'll just hop in the golf cart and go up and listen to music. I'm going to bump into people. It's nice. It's beautiful weather out. I mean, it's not as though I need someone to go with me, because it's just a community and you can show up and get involved in whatever's going on.
Yeah.
Okay. 2 questions.
Yes.
What's the best thing about the villages for you, and what's the worst thing?
The very best thing about the villages for me is the number and variety of activities, because I have a never-ending thirst for learning and doing new stuff. And what I have found is, depending on the time of the year, I'll do different things. So the variety is very important. The worst thing, and this is not the village's fault, it's just because I am so interested in native landscaping and healthy vegetation in our planned communities. I am just that's one of my hot buttons, as well as our food supply, which is terrible. We have a terrible food supply in this country. It's all the grass, all the turf, and the non-natural landscaping, that if they just turned the corner and started doing more natural landscaping, more native plants, we could increase the pollinator activity and the health of the community all the way around. More butterflies, more bees, more birds, more of what we need to keep a healthy community. It would be just delightful. And this developer has done an exceptional job. They have taken land along the turnpike that no one wanted, that people, they didn't want it. This was land that was sitting there that had little value, and have turned it into something that is incredible. We have holding ponds for water, so we're really trying to work on the water situation so that we're not water hogs. I mean, they've done so much to make this a benefit to the state of Florida and not be a burden on the state of Florida. I really do appreciate the efforts. I wish that they would go that little extra mile and start switching up the landscaping. We'll work in that direction,
Yeah,
So,
well,
Yeah.
Eventually nature will move in anyway. And
yeah, probably.
her power is without rival.
Yeah.
So.
Mhm. That's true.
Well, Kimberly, thank you so much. I'm so honored that you took time to spend time with us and with our audience. I'm delighted at the success of your YouTube show, Pretty Over 50. It's just such a positive experience being around you, and everything that comes out of your mouth is always just so positive and uplifting. So thank you for being with us today.
Well,
Absolutely.
I appreciate you having me on. It was such a privilege, and I feel honored to be able to spend time with both of you.
Yes, thank you so much. This it's always fun getting to know people, but it has been an absolute delight. So thank you.
Thank you. Nice to meet both of you.
Wonderful. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode of Tattered Capes. To learn more about the show, visit tatteredcapes.com and subscribe on your favorite platform. Until then, stay curious and remember, the superhero in all of us has a lot more resilient living to do. See you on the next show.